Good morning and welcome to another episode of my podcast, Healthy Workplaces. I'm Liz Burley, your host, and today I am welcoming Tina Steele from Steele Aspire Financial Management. Hello, Tina, and welcome.
Hi, Liz. Nice to be here. Thank you.
How are you today?
Good, yes, but cold. It's rather frosty.
Same here. Yes, you're up in North Yorkshire. I'm down here
Yeah,
in Birmingham. I think we're cold everywhere in the UK today. It's a
it is.
wonderful late November wintry scene out there. So
Mhm.
Tina, you are a a financial advisor, and you run
Yeah.
your own firm. Would you give us a little bit of an introduction to you and what you do?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I've been called many things. In fact, somebody the other day told me financial magician, which I quite
I
liked, and I've
like
been called
that.
financial therapist as well. But yes, I became a financial advisor about 6 years ago. My background, I'm a chartered accountant. So after university doing an accountancy degree, I went into industry and worked my way up through accounts, became qualified, gosh, back in 2006 as an accountant, and then went to work in education in FE colleges and universities. So very much along the strategic leadership type of finance. But the thing I loved along the way was the education of teams on finance, so the non-finance people and the people within my teams, and also the well-being of my teams and making sure they were all happy. So 6 years ago, when I decided to have a bit of a career change and run my own business, deciding what to do, this is the perfect balance of everything I love.
How wonderful. And you run your own financial advisory firm. Is
Yes.
that just you, or do you work with other people?
Yes, I officially appointed representative of St James's Place, who are authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Steele Aspire is my business, and I have a few people working with me. I have admin support, power planner, and mortgage advisor as well.
Wonderful. Now, Tina, you and I met through a business networking organisation, a community, and I know a little bit about what you do. I have to make a confession at this point that financial advice has always scared me a little bit.
Mhm.
It's something that I don't think I'm alone in that. I think it's something that people find a little bit daunting and often don't know where to start or when is a good time to start. So
Yeah.
why do you think financial education is important? And we're on a podcast talking about healthy workplaces today. What on earth has this got to do with people's health in the workplace and what difference can it make?
Really good question. Yeah, when I set up the business, as I said, it combined the love of everything that I do and the education. I used to lecture degree accounts and do bookkeeping courses and things as well. The education part is, I think, so important to everybody and actually can have an impact on the well-being. So I call it my three elements of finance, which is the three petals I'm pointing at my logo, which is
Ah,
financial advice, which is obviously what I do, but very much connected to those is financial education and financial well-being. Because all three should always go together, in my opinion.
mm,
And I think the financial advice is the nice to have on the side and someone working along with you. But actually, if you don't know what you don't know those education pieces, you can't have the confidence to manage your money, which can affect your well-being and cause anxiety and stress. So when we're talking about the workplace, in particular, the fear of finance and people not talking about it can cause anxiety, which can add to the stress and then can impact people's lives, which could affect the workplace.
mm, mm.
So I offer free financial wellbeing and webinars as part of my CSR corporate social responsibility to give back and educate. And I thought the fear was a thing, but I think I underestimated how big it was.
Mm,
And it's all levels. People who
mm.
don't have much, people who do. Lots of people have concerns, and I think it's great that the world's moved on in terms of well-being and the campaigns of it's good to talk. But does anyone say it's good to talk about finance and money?
Gosh, that's such a good point, isn't it? Do you think there's a sort of almost a cultural bias in our British society? And this podcast is going out in the UK. We're talking mainly to a
Yeah.
British audience. Do you think talking about money is almost seen as something a little bit taboo, a little bit vulgar, something you shouldn't do in British culture?
I do. And I also, from the people I talk to, there's a lot of I should know this, and there's embarrassment. There's people feeling they're going to be judged if they've not made decisions that they should have done. But this should. How would you know what you should have done if no one's told you what to do in the first place, or how to help, or options?
Mm.
So there's lots of self-judging around finance, I've found.
And I think it can be very complicated, a complicated business to know where to go for
Yes.
even a little bit of knowledge and awareness. I mean, we're now, the internet has made a massive difference, I should imagine, because there are so many resources out there online. I'm from a generation where when I started work, when I started earning money, that just wasn't available. You had to go and speak to somebody and have a meeting with them to get that advice. But now there is, there's all sorts of information out there on gov.uk and then more widely, so that people can educate themselves if they want to, if they're you know going to be a self-starter in that sense. But many people don't feel that that's something they can get started with themselves. So actually having a trusted person like you to sit alongside or on the end of the telephone or on a Zoom call can make all the difference to getting somebody actually started, can't they?
You can, and also, yes, there's lots of information out there, but how do you know which bits to look up?
Mm,
How do you know which bits, if you didn't even know it was a thing in the first place, how would you know to look it up? And I
yeah,
think that's my wellbeing webinar that I do is very generic. Obviously, everyone's circumstances are completely individual. And again, another reason why I love doing what I am doing, every conversation I have is completely different.
yeah.
And what people need to know is different. So it is a very first step to giving people some bits of information, and then giving them a space to follow up. But yes, it is. I wish it was taught earlier on. I
Mm.
wish this became in schools and colleges, because it is something everyone needs in life, pretty much, these skills.
If I had a pound for every time somebody had said to me, I wish we got taught about mortgages and pensions in school, I'd
Yeah.
have had a much better idea of what I was
Yes.
doing. Then I'd be a bit richer than I am now.
Yes.
And I might have had some money to save or
Yeah.
invest. But it's a good point, and how early is too early to start that financial literacy development, really. It's something we could think about even from primary age, for smaller children to get that a sense of what money is, the value of it, and
Yeah.
how what you're going to need it for in life, and why
Yeah.
planning is a good idea. Just in the
Mm.
same way that we're starting to do this, I think, with entrepreneurship,
Yes.
which is great. We're seeing much more education around entrepreneurship going to schools and colleges,
Mm.
but that's slightly different to talking about personal financial management, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The finances on the business side are great, and it's brilliant that they're doing more of that, because I didn't have any of that. And
Mm,
talking back, running your own business was not a career option. It was always a career, a
yeah,
profession that you went into,
yeah.
when I was at school. Brilliant that doing that. But yes, as you say, that wouldn't touch probably on pensions and things like that, which
No.
actually can be, the earlier you can plan, the better that retirement could be, if that's something that is a goal for people.
So who typically should start thinking about their finances, and when? When is the right time to start
Great
financial
question.
planning?
I'd say the earlier the better, but I'd say there's no wrong time, because everyone's situation, as I said, is completely different, and also life changes happen. So actually, someone might be okay. They might not necessarily need a lot of advice and planning, but then something may happen, such as divorce or partner passing away, and then actually the finances really completely change.
Mm,
And then at that point, they may need help. So I'd say there's no right or wrong time. Just the earlier the better, but there's no time too late either.
mm,
It's always worth sort of having some information so you can make an informed choice.
mm. And would you say that getting financial advice, going on one of your webinars, is the right thing for everybody to do? Or do you think there's a lot of people in life that are struggling right now financially, even making their money, their benefits, or their monthly income stretch as far as their outgoings every month just to survive? I mean, if you're in that situation listening to this podcast, is there any point thinking about some kind of financial planning, or is everything doom and gloom and you're never going to get out of this situation that you're in right now?
I think, again, great question. And I think this is about the wrong or right, and it depends on what kind of well-being and education
Mm,
you're getting. Mine, for example, one of the first things that I do is talk about budgeting.
Mm,
And actually, everybody has income and expenditure of some kind, or most people would.
mm,
And it's what you do with it, and are you in control of it? I'll give you an example. The other day, obviously, I don't deal with debt recovery, but I can point people in the right direction.
mm,
But somebody referred a lady to me just to have a call. She was really upset when this other lady talked to her, and she said to speak to Tina. And we had a quick half an hour call where she was in a council house with her daughter. She had spent everything she had, slightly going into her overdraft every month, and all she wanted was a garden for her daughter. So I just talked through really simply how to budget and see if she was doing that. She wasn't. So I asked her if she wanted to look through her statements, itemize what was essential, what was those bills she had to pay, there were the non-negotiables, have a look at what else was on there, the nice to have, the discretionary, see if she could do anything different. She might not be able to, but if you look at it, then you know you're in control of it.
mm.
And she rang me back a few days later, and she'd managed to cancel 2 subscriptions that she didn't even know she had,
Gosh.
and also spending sort of a coster,
Yeah.
every couple of weeks, actually saving that, cutting that out. And she'd saved now £50 a month,
Oh, that's
which she's now put a
incredible.
picture of her garden on the fridge, and she's saving up for a different kind of future. She was
Yeah.
like a changed person.
That's such a powerful story and a real experience because it shows the power of just taking some control over your
Yeah.
finances and what that the difference that can make. It's not just about the money, is it? It can be about how you see
No.
yourself, how you see
Yes.
your environment around you, your hopes
Yeah.
for the future. It can
Mhm.
make you think that other things are possible as well, just by
Yeah.
getting to grips with those numbers. And numbers are pretty powerful, aren't they? And I think sometimes there's a fear of the numbers. Would you agree with
Yes.
that? And
Absolutely. Yeah, people don't want to look just in case. And this
mm,
applies from people with, that are maybe having issues with money and not having enough, but actually completely at the other end as well.
yeah,
So I have clients who are very fortunate and earn a lot and spend a lot and maybe have businesses. And actually, when we look at their expenditure, they're like, I don't know what I spend because I
mm,
just spend because it's there.
mm,
And actually, then when we look at retirement, and actually the income may change because now they've got pensions to live off rather than the income. If they carry on spending as they're
mm,
spending, they're going to run out of pension.
yeah,
So actually, it's looking at that and seeing what actually they want to keep, and those informed decisions. So the decision making from budgets is all the way through from every level.
yeah. And I think the pension thing is really that's something I'm grappling with at the moment. In my going through my 50s. Um, the importance of pensions to me and my sort of generation, I guess, when we came out of school was very low. It was very low on the agenda,
Yeah.
and we weren't encouraged to think ahead about what we would need in the future.
Mhm.
The first time I consulted a financial advisor was after I was married. So
Mhm.
my husband and I were buying our first property, and we needed a mortgage, and we needed to look at what we could afford to borrow. And that, I think, that typically is an entry point
Mhm.
for a lot of people to
It
financial
is.
advice. But by that time,
Mhm.
I'd been working for a good 5 or 6 years, and I could have done it much sooner, and I could have
Yeah.
thought about pension much sooner. But I think there was a complacency that now things have changed so much now because
Mhm.
pension schemes have changed wholesale. The availability of occupational pension schemes,
Yes.
much reduced, and
Yeah.
thankfully now we have government intervention and a mandatory pension, auto
Yes.
enrollment pensions that
Yeah.
everybody is forced to save
Mhm.
something, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, pensions I think is even now, with everything we know, is still something that people think when they join the workplace, in their 20s or even younger, that's for another day. I don't need to
Mhm.
think about that now. I've got other priorities. And yet, one thing I've learned very recently is that the more you can put in at that young age, the better off you're going to be. It's going to cost you less if you do it then
Yes.
than if you wait
Yes.
into your 30s or 40s or even your 50s. It's going to cost you a lot more to try and
Yeah.
get back what you could have had if you'd started with a little bit at a younger age. So sorry, I've gone on a ramble then, which I didn't intend
No,
to do.
no,
This is your
no, that's
podcast, but
brilliant.
it's yeah, I just think listening to you speak has sort of cemented that in my mind a little bit. I've heard
It is.
my son talking about, he's just started work and started
Yeah,
thinking about budgeting very carefully, so he's got that
right.
extra little bit every month to add more into
Yeah,
his pension. And so some of the fundamentals that you're talking about, like the budgeting, or just even starting with look at your monthly income outgoing, is really, really important, just to get to that point where you can think about, okay,
mhm,
what if I had that money, or how could I
exactly.
make sure I've got that money?
It
So
is, and but it's a combination of lots of things as
mm,
well. Absolutely that. And thinking about pension earlier, it does, the compound growth is
yes.
brilliant, obviously, the earlier you put it in. But also, I get asked a lot. One of the most common questions I get asked is, how much do I need to put in my pension every month?
Mm,
And there's no one answer. Everyone is completely different because it depends on how old they are, how long to retirement, when they want to retire. Also, how much do they want to spend in
mm,
retirement? So actually looking at what retirement looks like, is it going to cost more or less than what you're spending now? Are you going to want to do more nice things? Are you going to want to go on more holidays? But if you've got a mortgage, is that going to end it? But if you're
mm,
renting, is that still continuing?
mm,
So many things to have a look at.
mm.
And then also, people don't always retire anymore.
Yeah.
So some people do consultancy or part-time work or have rental properties
Yeah.
or other bits and bobs going on. So it's completely different for everybody. So there's never one answer.
No.
So actually when people say, you say looking up in education and things, yes, there are calculators that help you work things out now, but it is quite complex
Yes.
deciding what's right for you. And also when I work with my clients and I do a life plan, I love doing that. It's my favorite
Mm,
bit. And all these ideas and aspirations come out for what they want to do. That life plan quite often changes year to
mm,
year, or, every few years, because something will change, something will happen. You might have to adapt your plan along with that.
yes.
So it's never straightforward, but
No.
yeah,
And it's not a one-time exercise, is it?
it's not.
I'll just do a
No.
financial plan and everything will go to plan, because, like you say, things
Oh,
don't.
you never know.
Lots of
It
things.
might do, but
If you're lucky, it might, but
yeah,
for most people, it won't, will it? And you're
yeah,
going to have to
no,
keep coming back to it and updating it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's all been enormously helpful, and just as a sort of a foundation for what people need to start thinking about if they're new to financial planning and they feel like they've got no knowledge and no agency in all of this. I
Yeah.
wanted to delve a little bit into what working with a financial advisor might be like for those people who have
Mhm.
no experience of it,
Yeah.
who've never done
Yeah.
it. So we thought about when people should start thinking about financial planning, but what would you say, if people have got a fear of being, well, who should I choose as my financial planner?
Mhm.
Where do I
Yeah.
go for this advice? I could Google financial advisors in my area, but the whole list will come up and it'll be, driven
Yeah.
by SEO. It won't necessarily be the best person for me. So what should people do to try and find the right advisor for them?
Good. Again, great question. And I think everyone's personalities are completely different, aren't they? And finding somebody that you feel comfortable talking
Mm,
with, and the more open people are about their thoughts and feelings and finances, then the better the advice can be. So it's really important to have someone you can work with. Websites and things, obviously, you find what people want to put out there, but there is a platform called Vouched For,
aha,
which is client reviews. So I'm on there. There's lots of financial advisors on there, also some accountants, solicitors on there, and clients or people that we've interacted with can leave their thoughts and feelings on there.
brilliant.
So that might be a good starting.
Yeah,
But it's a bit like Check a Trade for tradesmen. Lots of
yeah,
people
yeah,
use that.
yeah.
So it's a bit like that. People can go on and see what other people's experiences have been with that person.
Brilliant. And it's not fake reviews, it's real
It's
clients who have
not,
used you,
yeah,
which is really
real
important, isn't
people.
it?
Yeah, and they are
Fantastic.
verified and checked by the
Yeah,
platform as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
And would you say the approach, it's not so much about what people's technical expertise is, it's more about the approach, because there's a big element of trust involved in financial advice. And I think, if you've been around as long as I have, you'll know that there's a history really of people being missold to, the whole mis-selling in the industry, financial industry, has been a big thing that, going back sort of 30 years, isn't it? And people might just be put off. contacting a financial advisor because they think they're going to be sold to, that there's
Yeah.
some element of commission there. So how does it all work these days? I think a little bit of myth busting might be helpful for people
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, yes, it has changed a lot. I mean, I've been in the industry 6 years now, but obviously prior to that, very highly regulated accountancy, but the FCA, and now the regulations are even higher for
Mm,
financial advisors. And quite a few years ago, the level of education increased as well. So financial advisors are more highly educated. The FCA register, the Financial Conduct Authority register, is always a good place to start, just to check whoever you're talking to is on there. They are
mhm,
approved and they are active.
right.
Um, it's always good to do your due
Yeah.
diligence and your checking.
Yeah.
Also sort of checking websites and who they're affiliated with and checking they're on the register. So do all the kind of
Mm,
checks.
mm,
Um, but again, I think it comes back to reviews, referrals from people, asking people if they've worked with anybody, and seeing if they've had a good experience and they're not going to be sold at. I think financial advisors' approaches will be completely different.
mm,
Mine is very much from a wellbeing and education, and the advice comes with it.
mm,
It's a safe space to talk. That is my approach. Other people's approach may be very different and may feel more salesy,
mm,
although you would hope they're not salesy.
mm.
They're doing it for the right reason. Some advisors will specialise as well and not necessarily look at all areas. And some will have limits and won't speak to people unless they're investing a certain amount of money. Again,
Right.
that's not my approach. I will
Okay.
help anybody and everybody gets the same service. But yeah, everyone's different.
Yeah, and I think your story about the lady that you helped with the budgeting is a good example of how you work, that you don't
Yeah,
turn people away just because they're in a fix and they haven't got immediate business to bring to you. But like you
yeah.
say, but
Other people
shop
may.
around
Yeah,
carefully. Yeah, other people
yes,
may take
yeah,
that approach and do
yeah,
your due diligence. I think that's a really important thing, isn't it?
yeah,
Um, in the age of lots of scamming going on,
absolutely.
make sure that you're not you're not going, if somebody's approaching you saying they're a financial advisor, click on this link, find out more, let's set up a pension for you or some kind of investment vehicle.
Yeah,
Be very, very skeptical and make sure that you're
yeah.
not jumping at that opportunity. Do the checks that Tina's just mentioned. So another thing I think people can be put off about when thinking about financial advice and advisors who make a living out of this is, what is it going to cost me? And again, in days gone by, a lot of the financial products were linked to commission, and so you were sold the products that were going to give the most commission for the advisor. Does it still
Mhm.
work like that? If I came to you for a mortgage, would it cost me, would the cost be different to, say, tax planning or pension or insurance products? Bit of a
It is
minefield. I don't really know.
It is different for different advisors and different businesses. Ours is for pensions and investments and things. It would be a percentage based on what was being invested. For insurance company pay a commission. There's no extra charge on that. And mortgages, there'd be an admin fee,
Yeah.
and then some commission as well. So it does differ. Other people will be different. Some people charge upfront fees for advice or meetings. I do that free financial health check for anyone that wants one, the life on a page. I don't charge for that. It's only if it's the right thing to go ahead with a product or service. And they're making the informed choice. At that point, we agree on whatever's right for them, and there would be a charge. Obviously, we don't work for free. It'd be nice
No.
to be able to work for free, but yes, I would say again, double checking, making sure you know what those charges are. You know at the initial stage whether you're going to be charged for an initial conversation, and you're happy doing that. And don't be afraid to ask those questions.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
there is no set rules, so
No.
everyone will be different.
Yeah. Yeah, make sure that you've got the information so you can, the important words being informed choice, that you know what, if you make
Exactly.
that choice, that you know what it's
Yes.
going to cost you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I guess any financial advisor who's doing things properly will be very happy to provide that information. In
Yeah.
fact, you won't have to ask for it. So look at
No.
all these factors when you're dealing with people
Yeah.
and
Well,
whether
in
you
my
want to go
first
ahead with them.
meeting, there's a
Yeah,
there's a brochure that
yeah,
we'd always give out in the first meeting, which details everything.
brilliant.
Yeah.
So, you talked about your webinars that you do. How do
Yes.
people find those if they're thinking, I just want to get started? That sounds like a brilliant idea. I want to watch
Yeah.
Tina's webinar.
So at the moment, I do the webinars for businesses and charities, organisations, some networking groups. So I have a landing page, financial wellbeing on Steele Aspire website, that people can go on and find my details. It's completely free. I don't charge for it because it is guidance and education. I'm not giving advice. It is very generic. It's about 40 minutes to an hour long. So if anyone's interested, feel free to drop me a line and I can talk through if it's relevant or if we can tweak it depending on the audience. Um, and then I would say actually one thing there, I did talk to a company last year, and the interesting thing from them was they wanted a webinar for their cleaning and maintenance staff because they were having issues paying the bills and getting to work and couldn't afford petrol. That was the kind of
Mm.
overview. And I said, oh, great. Yeah, absolutely. I can try and help with budgeting and those things. And I can tailor it specifically to a little bit more around the budgets. But do you want something for the rest of the team and the managers and directors? And the answer was, no, they're fine. And I just, it was interesting that how do
Mm.
you know? And this is the
Mm.
good to talk. So the webinar is open to anybody. It can be sectioned off in businesses to different levels. It can be tweaked to different types of topics. But yeah, just have a chat, see if anyone's
Brilliant.
interested in getting some education.
So reach out to Tina via your website if that's of interest and you'd like to talk about having that webinar for your workforce or your group, your community, whatever it is. And that just brings me on to then my next question, really. That's a lovely segue. What do you think then, if we're thinking about the workplace, and we've talked a lot about people's sort of personal responsibility
Yeah.
for their own finances and what they can do to get started with that. But do you think there's any responsibility on employers to help with this? You've talked about an organisation that contacted you because they could see there was a problem.
Mm.
Should employers wait until it becomes an issue that's affecting people's ability to show up for work or be productive? Or do you think there's a more proactive approach that businesses could take here?
I would hope a more proactive one going forward. Again, with the well-being moving forward, I see well-being as a triangle. Physical well-being, so the health and safety. You'd hope that's done in a workplace and it's done all the time. It's not when something happens that an issue's dealt with. And then there's the mental well-being, which I think more employers now are doing that again
Mm.
proactively and doing the first aid, mental health and the suicide awareness and all those things, which are amazing. But I think financial well-being is the other end of the triangle. And I think that's the one that's often left. But actually, as we talked about the fear of finance and the anxiety it can cause, it's quite a big issue. And actually understanding, sometimes one thing I do with employers is actually just tell people on the webinar what benefits they already have with their employers.
Mm.
So the employers might be great and they might be giving them income protection,
Mm.
death in service, health cash plans, or whatever it might be. The employers don't even know they have them or what it means
Yes.
or what their pension means. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's just re-educating them on what they already have and realizing how great that is.
I think that's a really good point. And we're talking about perhaps larger employers here rather than micro businesses or smaller
Mhm.
SMEs. But it's a really good point because I come across this as in the legal work that I do. Sometimes if I'm advising somebody on a settlement, when we come to talk about pension, they don't know what they've got.
Yeah.
They don't know what it means. That when we talk about payments and tax and that kind of thing, often that just they're completely
Mhm.
phased by it. So
Mhm.
having just having an explanation of what you've got and what it means, so you
Yeah.
can understand and take a little bit of control of your personal knowledge,
Yes.
and start making some choices. And you're not phased by what you see on your pay slip or what's in the
Yeah.
company handbook on policies. Absolutely brilliant. And understanding the cost if you decide to take advantage of a policy,
Mhm.
that there might be some cost to you. You might have to make a contribution every month. It might
Yeah.
cost you in tax, having that understanding as well, so you can work out whether it's right for you at that time or maybe in the
Mhm.
future. But all really, really, really powerful stuff that can make a
Yeah.
big difference to people. But it's actually sort of seeing
Mm.
what's in front of you already rather than what what more do we need to do.
Exactly. And there might be nobody in the organization to do that because,
Mm,
HR may be the person looking after the
mm,
policies,
mm.
finance might be pensions, might be
Yeah,
HR, different in different companies, but they're not advisors.
no.
So they may know bits, But again, who is giving the employees that type of education and information? And possibly no one.
Yes.
Um,
Really
but
good
it can
point.
make an impact on people's
Yeah.
lives to have that.
And probably as a quite a small cost for an employer. If somebody like you is prepared to go in and do it for free, fantastic. But even if it's not free, I mean, actually quite a small cost spread across the workforce to make quite a big difference to
Yeah,
how they interact with their finances. And
yeah.
yeah, and I really love the triangle. I think that's really great, and I've not heard anybody talk about that before.
Oh,
So yeah, a lot of businesses are health and safety aware, particularly if you're in the manufacturing or
yeah,
engineering, construction sectors. That's
yeah.
top of the list, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But the physical and mental well-being perhaps isn't thought about in quite the same way, but it is becoming more important, and conversations are starting to happen, and bringing that into the workplace. But this financial piece, it made me think of the sort of hierarchy of needs, what people
Yes,
need to
yeah.
thrive.
Maslow's, yeah.
Wow. And the physical, your home,
Mm-hmm.
shelter, food
Mm-hmm.
on the table,
Mm-hmm.
clothing is fairly
Yeah,
basic down at the bottom,
it
isn't it?
is.
And yet it can be so heavily impacted, and we know it is right now for people, just
Yeah.
because costs have gone through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Just to heat your house through the winter, it means you're going to have to make
Yes.
choices about other things that are fundamental as well. And
Mm.
that's, for some people, that's unavoidable. But
Yeah,
having a little bit of help to think about those numbers every month could make a big difference to somebody listening
it
to this.
does. And it
So
might always not be things people want to think about, such as,
yeah,
insurance is one I find, or protection, I like
yeah,
to call it,
yeah,
because you're thinking about not being very well or not being here anymore. And they're not necessarily nice things to think about, but
yeah,
actually going through that process with people and getting to think about what would happen if, and those ifs, and if there's no answer to what would happen if, that could throw somebody's life plan, even if they have one, completely out the window should anything happen.
absolutely. Yeah,
So there's so many, like I say,
mm,
elements to finance and
yeah.
making sure that it's right for the person.
So this idea, this concept of it being like a matrix of different factors, I think is really important. Thank you for um, sort of majoring on that today, because that's something that I will take away from this. Um, that you can see, often think about money in isolation to other things, but actually it's part of the sort of I don't know, the kind of infrastructure of your life, isn't it? If you haven't got money to do what you want to do, it's going to limit your life in so many different ways. Um, so Tina, what would be your key takeaway then for our audience today, if you can leave one
Um,
thing for them to think about?
yeah, I'm gonna add in two, but it is kind
Please
of one,
do.
if that's okay.
That's
So
fine.
I'd say set goals. Think about what you particularly want, and that might be short, medium, long term. Maybe break it up. I always go 5, 10, 15 years, but for some people, short term might be 3 months.
Yeah,
That's fine. So whatever works for you. So think about what those goals are, and then the next step is budget. So I talked about it before. So breaking up what's your essential bills, what's the nice to haves. Can you do anything different with your budget to get to the goals? Then you're going to have that self confidence. You're going to feel more in control. Your anxiety may reduce if you have any, and it should give you a nicer feeling of financial well-being that you're on the way to achieving something.
fantastic. And to be able to tick those things off the list is gives
Absolutely.
gives people enormous satisfaction, doesn't it? Whatever they may be. It doesn't have to be
Yes.
the cruise around the world.
No.
It could be the
No.
garden. It could be the
Yeah.
holiday next year,
Yeah.
or it could be just a nice day out with the family. It doesn't matter. Everybody's circumstances are different, and I like the fact that you take that nuanced approach.
Mhm.
That this isn't all one kind of size fits all. You must
Oh,
have this,
absolutely.
this, and this ticked off. It's very much
Yeah.
a holistic and tailored approach to each individual person. So,
Yeah.
Tina, it's been really, really great talking to you today, and I've learnt a lot, and
Ah,
I'm sure our audience have. And I'd like to be able to tell them where to reach you if they want to contact you and talk about some of these things more.
brilliant.
So
Thank
I'm going
you.
to flash up your details at the end. You have a website, and I think you're contactable through your website. Would that be right?
Yes, the website or LinkedIn, or as I said, the virtual platform as well. If people want to look at reviews, my details are on there as well.
That's fantastic. So, Tina, thank you very much. You've been a brilliant guest. Really enjoyed chatting to you today,
Been
and
great.
enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. See you later.
Bye
Bye.
bye.